What's up, everybody? I'm Eric July, the founder and owner of Rippaverse Comics, as well as the writer for Isom #1. Today, as part of our content series, we're going to be discussing Isom 1 and the comic book industry with the great Eric Weathers, who was, of course, the letterer for Isom #1 and Isom #2, which is, of course, on the way. Brother Eric, how are you doing?
Doing good. How are you doing?
I can't complain, certainly at all. I'm glad we could finally get you on and really chat about everything with the project, all of that sort of stuff, because Isom #1 was beyond my wildest imagination, wildest dreams. I had no idea that this would be have the level of success that this initially had. You, of course, got in very early on the project and committed to the project early on. And I want you to let the audience, basic stuff, let them in on how you approach this. None of us saw it going the route that it went, but let everybody know how you approached it.
Really, I didn't really think of it much different than I approach really anything else. It's sort of, I get work for hire work all the time. I'm a full-time freelance designer and artist, so I just sort of take that approach to every job. I was excited to be a part of the team, that's for sure, because I was excited what you were planning to do with Rippaverse and being able to sort of jump off, the diving board, so to speak, at the same time, was definitely if this one, there was certainly it felt a little different this time around, just because I know you have a much larger audience than a lot of the other people I work with, save a couple of people. So it was definitely unique in that aspect for sure.
I certainly think that it's very important to note how dependable you are as a creative on surrounding yourself with people that know exactly what it is that they are doing. Obviously, with you guys being a part of this project, couldn't have done it without you, but you would have told me if something was certainly off. With that being said, explain to the audience, because they don't understand how important the letters are. A lot of people just neglect it altogether. Explain to the audience how it works and what you do to certainly work your magic.
It's actually, it's one of my favorite parts of what I do is being that last step in the chain, outside of like maybe final edits and pre-press, but that last step in the chain of making the comic. When I turn in my pages, you or the person, the project lead, the writer, whoever, they get to see their comic for the first time as a comic.
Yeah. Because
once those word balloons and sound effects are in there, it's a comic book. Before then, it looks great. It's sequential art. You can maybe tell what's going on. But when the words are on there, it's the only thing that's better than that feeling is actually holding it in your hand.
Yeah.
In my opinion, at least.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, so being able to have that I can hand somebody and be like, here's your comic, this thing that you've labored over for months, years, maybe even decades in some cases. Now it's real. Now you can read it. Now you can hear your characters' voices like you never have before. It's great to be that part of the creative process.
We all were kind of on the numbers watch when this thing first launched. I want to know what was going on in your mind as we looked at Isom getting up there to like the stratosphere was really what it was. And none of us, through all our internal talks, none of us actually anticipated doing what it did.
It's incredible. I mean, I've been doing this for 5 or 6 years, professionally lettering for about 5 or 6 years. And there's always, you do a book and then I'd say 99% of what I worked on has always been crowdfunded comics. So being able to be a part of a team and you see a campaign and maybe reach 100,000, you're like, wow, that made it 100,000. Or, I worked with Ethan Van Sciver on Cyberfrog with Wreck Planet and a few other books. But, that reached 1 million. But that took he didn't get there as quickly as Isom did, as you did. So there's certainly it was just incredible to see just the response just flow in like immediately to skyrocket. I remember I was DMing you like, I don't know, how long did it take to get there? I'm like, wow, you already hit 1 million. It's incredible. So yeah, it was, it's something to really, hang your hat on, I suppose. right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's certainly a feat.
In our space, I consider you basically the top dog as far as letterers, right? A lot of us are going to you for our projects. I want to know how you got to that point, and really just because it's not orthodox. Let's just say that you have folks that want to enter comic books as artist, writer, but you know, as a letterer, it's you don't see a whole lot of people that want to enter into that game. How was it for you?
It sort of just kind of fell into my lap in a sense. I had spent almost a decade working on my own book, a book called Flying Fortress. I did with a couple friends of mine, and through the process of making that, it was 8.5 issues. I did everything because I couldn't afford to not do everything myself. You know, it was a collaborative effort. We wrote it together. I drew it, inked it, colored it, and lettered it. And I'd get to the coloring stage, and I did not like to color. And then I got to lettering, and there was this big relief, like, I'm not coloring anymore. I don't know if that was some sort of like Pavlovian response or whatever, but I felt good to letter. And then that sort of moved into me getting one small gig from a friend who was working on his other comic, who we actually ended up working together on my current project, Battle Brick Road, which I draw, and he wrote. His name's Zeb Hatfield. I lettered one of his books, and then that was my first real professional gig that wasn't my own project. And after I had done that, I found all about what was going on with Comicsgate and everything in that whole arena with Zach and Ethan and everybody. And John Malin had put a tweet out basically saying, hey, we need a letterer. We want a 90s style, heavily Spawn influenced, like Tom Warzakowski used to letter back in the 90s. This is the deadline. Show me what you got. And all I could go off of was the artwork on the page of the Graveyard Shift campaign, and that was it.
Yep.
There was no script. There was nothing. So I took one page off the campaign. I threw it into Adobe Illustrator, and I took the lyrics from Metallica's One, the opening lyrics from that song, and I just peppered them in as if those were the dialogues or the word balloons for the page, and I turned that in and got the job. And then shortly after that, I got Jawbreakers from your boy Zach, and I mean, the rest is history.
All right. Now, everybody kind of has their little perspectives, and I want to know if you have any sort of advice that you would offer to people that are trying to get, let's say, into this game in any level, artist, letterer, writer, whatever, part of the comic book sphere. What would you advise that they do, or how would you advise they look at it if they have those sort of aspirations?
There are a few things that you should consider. Obviously, different people will have different circumstances. You know, if you just want to be a writer, you're going to have to find somebody that can draw it if you can't draw anything. Same goes for being an artist. If you don't know how to write, or you're not comfortable enough writing, I think my main advice would be to ultimately start small, because that's how I did it. I'm just speaking from experience. But when we had started our book 12 years ago, or however long it was, I didn't know how to make comics at all. I could barely draw at the time. So it was, okay, let's just make this 8-page ashcan. Let's just make this little tiny story and get it out there. And we, kit bashed it all together. We had it printed at Kinko's. We stapled it like a zine in our own, my basement, went to a convention and sold it. And it was very much just a grassroots effort, but it was small. It was, in the grand scheme, we had this plan of however many issues and pages and all of that. But to really understand maybe what it takes to make a comic book as a whole, I think starting small is important, especially if it's something you haven't done before, or you don't maybe have the resources to find people around you that can make it bigger from the beginning.
The fun thing about what it is that we're doing is we get to do our own thing, but it is seriously, and I use this term again, unorthodox. Cards are kind of stacked against you when you enter into the American comic book industry. But to me, that's the fun part. Everybody's learning, and certainly all of that. In your experience, or rather, what is that experience in terms of navigating the comic book realm with these sort of different set of rules that really don't apply to us, and really trying to get out there and be great?
It's the Wild West out there, especially in this crowdfunding scene. And I know that a lot of us have sort of come together within CG, within Comicsgate, and it's not necessarily that we're not, none of us are really in the same company or anything like that. It's just a pool of like-minded creators that want to make content that doesn't pander, that doesn't, speak down to their audience, want to make stuff that's fun, that want to make the comics that either aren't being made anymore, or just maybe those kinds of stories that aren't out there that you always wanted to read anyway, so you might as well do it yourself. Yeah. But it's been great to be a part of a, for lack of a better term, community of creators and fans that ultimately work together. There's a relationship.
Yeah.
Between the reader and the creator that I think is unlike it has ever been before in the whole world of comic book making. Because, as you know, a lot of us are out there, if not every week, almost daily, live streaming, interacting with an audience, interacting with each other on social media, talking with one-on-one with fans, having them on your show. It's like a convention every day. It's been absolutely incredible to be a part of such a movement that continues to gain steam.
I really, really do like the whole Wild Wild West comparison. As everybody has the opportunity to make it unique to them, and to me, that's what it's about, right? You get to get out there. You don't have to follow any particular rules, and just get to go. Hey, you come across it. Sounds like a good idea. Sounds like a bad idea. You accept it. You reject it. All of that good stuff.
Yeah, and it's been really great because I'm in a lot of like DM backrooms, and it's like, hey, what did you do to solve this problem? Or hey, I can't find a colorist. Can you guys help me? I'll find a colorist. Or like, there's just this whole feeling of we're all into this together, even though we're all also competing with one another. So it's. I don't know what to compare it to, really. It seems pretty unique, especially in the creative field, but it seems just unique just in general. But it's, like I said, it's been incredible.
Before we get out of here, I want you to let the audience in on what else you are working on, obviously outside of Isom too.
Battlebrick Road is the big one. We have our pre-launch sort of sign-up thing going on right now for the sequel, battlebrickroad.com. That's my bread and butter. That's my Isom. So that's the big one. As far as like other projects, I'm constantly working with Ethan on Cyberfrog, and we've been wrapping that up. I know that like the main book's done, and we're doing a little deleted scenes thing right now, and we're working through the letters on that. I mean, you go down the list on our side of the aisle. I mean, I've worked with everybody, at least it or almost everybody. There's a couple of outliers out there that I'm like, come on now. I'm right here. But let's see. We just recently finished up Terror in the Trenches from Von Klaus, wrapped up Fatal from Clint Stoker. I'm always going to forget what I'm working on. I'm working on the books with Allegiance Arts right now. I'm doing the Saints. We'll be doing Bass Reeves here in a little bit too.
Nice.
We finished up Inglorious Rex from Shane Davis, and that's obviously getting in people's hands. They're really, really loving that too. So there's just tons of stuff, and obviously there's more coming with Malin's Graveyard Shift Omega Storm and all of that. So I'm leaving out a ton, so I apologize to everybody today.
Again, Eric, I appreciate you joining us. Giving the audience that perspective is very, very important, and I can't wait to have you for Isom number 2.
I hope so. Thanks for having me on, Eric.